And also what we need to think about as well with the listening is, am I familiar with different accents? Well, English should be the same. Well, no, a lot of students are not familiar with certain accents, so we can give them activities, materials, things that help them with all different accents, not just one or the other. American English, British English, those are the most common, but there might be things like, English from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, all those kinds of places. So we have to really give them exposure to those different kinds of listening skills. Anything else you'd say about general listening, Claudia?
Yeah, I mean, the listening is more than just listening, because some answers are not straightforward. Sometimes an answer will be implied. For example, in the audio, they may hear, he likes swimming, hiking, bungee jumping, or something like that. And then in the answer option, the actual answer may be, he likes outdoor activities. So not only teaching them how to listen, but also how to understand when something's implied and not straightforward.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's something we'll cover in the listening section. When it comes to reading, it's about vocabulary, definitely, and then grammar as well, to comprehend, because reading comprehension is something that students don't really pay a lot of attention on. They think, well, I know what this article is about, so I can answer the questions. Well, in reading, especially the reading test, the best advice is read the questions first, find what you need, and then go back and select the information. So skimming and scanning skills, I'm sure you're all aware of, but unless they can actually find that information quickly, then they're going to run out of time very fast. So it's about understanding the question. What is the question asking me? Going to the text, finding the information quickly, and then inputting the answers. So the strategies there can be taught through general English, through looking at articles, common topics, highlighting certain words, building vocabulary, synonyms, all those kinds of things can be really important for the reading as well. And again, if they can read well, and the more they read, the more types of text they read, the faster and the more effective and efficient their reading skills will be for IELTS. So there's definitely a connection between them. What about for writing, Claudia? How would we cover this one?
Yeah, so last week we spoke about the differences between IELTS writing and just normal academic writing. If we're just talking about general writing, you really have to assess where your student is at and then take it from there. So even just giving them daily activities like journaling, just so that they can get into the routine of writing. So yeah, really important. It's just like any kind of general English. It's something they have to do consistently. Once you get them to do that and they get comfortable writing, then you can start teaching them the IELTS strategies, and also just telling them to read more, because that is connected to writing. The more you read, yeah.
And you can give students an article based on current affairs, technology, science, education. These are all very common topics on IELTS, and ask them to write a summary, task 1, or to respond to a certain point in the article, which would be similar to task 2. So this is something that you can definitely start working on. And then once you go to the IELTS part, the right IELTS task, it's already there. The groundwork is already there. The foundation's already there. And then speaking, again, fluency and pronunciation. I did a workshop last week to about 100 students in China, and they're nodding along and writing everything down and taking great notes. And I asked them a question, and nobody wants to speak. And when they do speak, their speech is actually, fantastic. It's really clear. I understand everything. However, it's that confidence and it's that lack of practice, because they don't speak in class. It's alien to them. When they come to the IELTS test, the same thing happens. They might have the ideas, but they don't have the confidence or the experience. So your job is to get them speaking as much as possible about lots of different topics, and building that spontaneity and that flexibility, so that when they do speak in the IELTS test, it comes to them naturally. They can give ideas, they can develop them, they can extend them and hit a good score, especially for fluence. Pronunciation as well. They can get good pronunciation through correction with you, through listening tests that you assign them, through feedback as well, which you said you've been doing, which is wonderful as well. So again, it seems really simple, but we need to identify and we need to say this will help you with IELTS reading because of, or by doing this, this will help us with task 1 writing. By doing this, this will help us with task 2 speaking. So if we make those connections, then definitely the students will be invested and they'll start to do these extra things to build up their general English as well. And they'll get a better chance of getting a higher score. Again, we always use an analogy. IELTS it's a test, it's a proficiency test. It's not necessarily how good your English is, it's your ability to produce certain responses and communicate in certain ways. So we kind of need to have the foundations to be able to apply to these specific functions of the test as well. And a good understanding of general English, it will help them with understanding and interpreting the test questions. Because like you said, Claudia, sometimes the questions are a bit misleading. They might have, implied responses. They might say, it's this, but it's actually that. Or the one that I found the other day is the question was, where is this town located? And in the listening, it said, the province is a coastal province, but the town is located slightly inland. So it really threw them off. So again, exposure, practice, it sounds so natural and so easy, but actually, if we just say to a student, between now and next class, IELTS, 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 then they might actually hyper-focus too much on certain tasks and not on their English, which is equally as important. So they kind of go together hand in hand. Any more points on this?
Yeah, so I agree with everything you're saying. Another thing that I would take into consideration is if they are scared to speak when they first join your lessons, then the goal is just to get them to speak. So, and that's up to you to kind of discern where they're at. If you just start you throwing IELTS at them and they're scared to speak, it will just paralyze them even more. So just getting them to speak sometimes is the goal, because a lot of them have the knowledge, they have the words, they just need to use them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. So yeah, we've talked about the connection. We'll talk about reading regularly, what that means, what that looks like, how that translates to IELTS. Then listening, how do we listen to English? It's not as simple as just listening. Practice speaking, some specific ways you can do this. Regular writing as well, how can they do that? Paraphrasing, this is a skill, a really valuable skill for speaking and writing especially, that can help students a lot. A lot of reading texts are also, paraphrased, or they're not from the original form, so that can help. Immersion, how can they immerse themselves if they don't use English at home, around their friends, around their family? How can we do that? We've got some resources for you, and then we'll do some questions and answers as well. Now, a couple of questions just based on some insights that I got from students, basically collecting, sorry, I'll go back, just collecting a lot of data from students. What challenges the students face? So of all the students that I polled and spoke to last week, there was about 115 students. I gave them a little survey. I said, what challenges do they face? Pretty much the major ones were vocabulary, grammar, the structures, and confidence. So, being confident, I don't want to make a mistake, I don't want to look bad, I don't want my friends to make fun of me, etc. These are the three main things that we found. When it comes to vocabulary, this is something we can work on a lot, just by looking at texts, looking at, certain passages, certain questions, and breaking them down. Grammar is more tricky because what we'll generally find is that students translate directly from their first language to their second language. When they do that, they lose the accuracy, they lose the pronunciation or the stress of certain words, and they also lose meaning in their ideas as well with writing. And then confidence, again, the more you speak, the easier it will become. So give students a challenge, get them to speak as much as possible, even if it's about very basic things. Just get them started, because I've been there, and again, I had a student this morning, they're at a 3.5 for IELTS, so like super low, and asking them, what did you do last weekend? Like it used to take 5 minutes. Now it takes 20 seconds, but they're still making errors, but we're just going step by step. So just really support them and guide them, build their confidence. And as long as they're, speaking, then that's the first step. Then you can start to support and give feedback as well. So that was the first insight that we got. What resources do they use? So I asked them, how do you improve your English? What do you do? Pretty much all of them said videos on social media, short videos on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, YouTube, or whatever the equivalent is. Attention span is really short. So when you're giving materials and giving, resources for them, likelihood is they probably won't watch a 30-minute, 40-minute video. They might watch a 10-minute video, like a TED talk, if their level is high enough. If their level isn't high enough, go even more simple, a short clip of a TV show or a short clip of a movie with subtitles, something that can help them. Those are the main things that we got from the feedback. And then finally, the skill they find most difficult. A lot of them said speaking, even though they can speak quite well. Which was interesting, or at least they know how to speak. But they said speaking, I think, which ties into confidence and making mistakes. So that is what I found from the research, and these were the insights that I got. Did you want to add anything else, Claudia, based on these results?
Yeah, so I get the same from my students. A big one is confidence. That's major for them. And also giving them podcasts maybe as well. Podcasts and things in the beginning that they like. Because IELTS is, you don't really focus on what they like, you focus on the IELTS topics, and they may have to read and listen to things that they don't want to. But when they first start out with you, depending on their level, get them to choose things that they actually enjoy listening to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's get started with reading. How can we improve General English and then IELTS through reading? So again, I won't read all of this, but there will be the recording and the slides will be available for you. But again, it's really important for students to look at different reading styles and different writing styles. So a lot of them, I was working with students who are reading novels and they cannot string a sentence together in English. So there's a clear disconnect there. So they need to be aware of different styles, because in the reading text in the exam, in the IELTS test, they will have articles, short stories, extracts, all those kinds of texts in there, and they'll see different vocabulary and grammatical structures. They might see vocabulary they've never seen before. So we can teach them how to read around words, how to look for certain synonyms and antonyms of certain words to help them. And when they read, they need to see the context. This is really, really key. So context is huge. To try to give contextual clues, contextual explanations to things, where they might see these words or in what situation these words and phrases might come up. So books, obviously, newspapers, magazines, and online articles. So these are some of the places they can go for reading practice. Again, I'll provide you with some specific examples of ways that they can do this. Again, at the lower level, there's lots of ESL websites. Breaking News English is a great one that I find is really helpful, which I've listed here. And again, some of them really love reading. So if you want to give them some fiction or nonfiction text based on what they like, that is fine. And maybe go one chapter a week or a few pages at a time, or maybe even look at a couple of pages together. That can really help them build their knowledge and understanding. News from reputable sources. So New York Times can be a good resource, BBC News, The Guardian. These are going to be more technical things, things like science, technology, the environment. So if they're a bit higher in level, you can definitely test them with these. National Geographic is great for my younger learners because they are very visual. They like to look at different pictures and images, so you can use that as a starting point. Time Magazine has been good for students who are interested in business, or they're taking business programs, or they're interested in people specifically, which you can talk about and describe the person, talk about why they're famous or why they're well known, or their background, their industry. And then we said websites, BBC Learning English, Breaking News English, Voice of America. So these are some really useful materials. And also not just reading, but also active reading. So I'm sure you know what I mean by active reading. While they're reading, you can do this alongside with them if you have, using Zoom or your platform. Take notes. What are some keywords in this paragraph? What does this word mean? Well, how does this connect to the overall title? Or how does it connect to this? So you can definitely do that. So there's definitely some different ways to do that. So these are some things to think about for sure. So definitely consider this when it comes to the reading. And then also, building the speed, building the fluency in reading. So, by reading regularly, they can build up their speed, which is going to help them in the IELTS reading, because then they can skim and scan. They can cherry pick out what they need. They don't have time to read everything in the IELTS reading. It's just not feasible. Look at the questions first, work backwards through the text. I mean, and if I go to the grocery store, I go shopping. If I have a list, 10 things I need, it's really quick, easy. If I go in, don't have a list, I don't know what I need, I don't know where things are, it's going to take me way, 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 way longer. I'm going to lose time and lose focus and maybe get distracted, spend more than I need, focus on the wrong things. So this is why it's really important for students to read regularly. Any other points on reading regularly, Claudia?
Yeah, so again, reading everyday English, like you mentioned, if they read a novel, that's great, but what can they produce everyday English from that novel? So yeah, just having
Exactly.
a variety of reading resources, I think, is important.
Yes, exactly. Good. And I've noted down these resources and I'll share these with you as well afterwards when we send out the notes and the replay. Okay, so that's reading. Listening. So this is obviously really important because it comes, with comprehension, vocabulary, pronunciation. Students generally mispronounce words and we might be sat there like, sorry, what did you say? And you hear them, and, oh, okay, you mean this. That's a little bit to do with their first language or just how they see the word when they're trying to sound it out phonetically. So try to give them a variety of different learners as well. So it might not necessarily just be, American English or British English. Try to give them a range and use it as a learning point, as a starting point for them as well. The more exposed they are, the easier they're gonna find it on the listening test or when they're being asked by an examiner certain questions, because their examiner might not be from that country where they're taking the test. They might be from another country. They might have a different accent as well. Again, podcasts you mentioned, audiobooks are great, TV shows, movies. Again, it has to be at their level, something they're interested in, and set them tasks and set them assignments based on those. Don't just say, hey, watch this movie. Well, great. What did I learn? What's the goal? So start with materials that match the listening level, and then you can gradually progress to more challenging text or more challenging listening tasks. We also have different materials for listening skills. So TED Talks Daily is really nice. It's a short 7 to 10 minute listening they can do every day. The English We Speak, I like this one as well. 6 to 7 minutes a day as well. And Stuff You Should Know is really nice. It's kind of a scientific learning about the world, current affairs as well. Audiobooks of English novels or nonfiction books, again, are great. There's a lot of audiobooks available now. Some of my students really hate reading, but they love listening. So we just do it in reverse. I get them to listen. I give them questions to read. We discuss the questions. We talk about them. TV shows or movies with English subtitles. Yeah. Don't watch it with the subtitles from your first language. Watch it with English subtitles. Pause it, stop it, write down the word. Daniel, I watched this TV show and there was this expression. I don't know what it means. Let's talk about it. Let's contextualize it. And then online resources. The British Council's Learn English YouTube, again, is great if you go to the right channels. And then active listening, same as active reading. While we're listening, pause it, write down the word, circle it, highlight it, come back to it, find the meaning, find the context, etc. This is really good for the listening test because you only get one listen. And again, the better you can listen, the more effective you are at listening, the easier you can pick out information, the easier it's going to be and the better you're going to do on the test. So sounds simple, but it's tough for a lot of students. Any other input here, Claudia?
Yeah, I think also just asking students what is their opinion about something,
Yes.
because students always have an opinion. And
Yes.
so, and it's a great way for them to practice expressing their opinion in a less pressured way,
Right.
if we compare it to an IELTS speaking test. So just asking them, like, what stood out for you? Discussing different ideas with them and concepts and what do they think about it and how it applies to their life. I think that will help them remember what you're discussing.
I like that. I think that's a really good advice as well. And it connects to IELTS. And you can say, in IELTS speaking, you're going to be asked for your opinion. So the easier it is to give an opinion, the better you're going to do. Exactly. All right, let's talk about speaking, Claudia. What are some ways we can improve general English for speaking, and how does it apply to the IELTS test? So we've talked a lot about confidence. What are some other ways we can improve and build confidence in speaking?
Yeah, so we talk about topic-based lessons a lot, but I think having a topic is great because it starts, the student doesn't have to think, oh, what am I going to say? They do have something to say based on that topic. And whenever they learn a word based on a topic, they remember it because they connect the word to something. So I would say having those topic-based discussions. For example, let's talk about social media today. So if you can get an article on social media, discuss the advantages and disadvantages and their opinion, I mean, that's like a very sneaky way to prepare them for IELTS speaking, without actually saying that it's IELTS. So,
Yes.
and it helps them for their general English as well. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And again, we can start on the accuracy. So, okay, talk about this, and you can time them, and you don't need to tell them that you're timing them, but you can again apply it to IELTS, because you have to speak for 2 minutes in part 2, generally 30 to 40 seconds in part 1, and maybe a bit longer, maybe almost a minute in part 3. So you can time them and say, okay, can you tell me more? Can you give me an example? So again, you're building in those structures, like you said, without really realizing it. That builds their fluency. And then maybe they have some errors in accuracy, which you can go back and correct. Okay, you said you go here. Do you mean you went here? Oh, okay, great. So yeah, it was because it's in the past, you went here, and then you can start building that up as well. And try to strike a balance between accuracy and fluency, because you can't catch every error and correct every error. Likewise, you don't want to keep interrupting them. So try to strike a balance between accuracy and fluency when speaking. I think that's pretty common. It's pretty basic, but that is speaking. Speak as much as you can. Try to use any opportunities in the class, with your teacher, with you. I do voice notes on WhatsApp sometimes instead of typing, just to make it easier for students when I'm speaking to them. And they should do the same. So it just makes it a bit more conversational as well. Writing, write regularly. Well, what do we mean by writing regularly? What do you think, Claudia? How can we encourage students to write more often? What are some things we can advise them?
yeah, so every day, it has to be every day.
Yes.
So like, as I've mentioned before, keeping a daily journal. Some students may not really enjoy that. So then if they don't want to keep a daily journal, well, then they can write a short essay or a summary about a topic. So what did you do today? Just tell me what you did today, but write it down. If you don't want to keep your own journal, then I want to know, what did you do Monday, Tuesday, this whole week? What did you do every single day? Just write a short little summary about your day. And so it's simple, it's bite-sized, and it's something that they can do every single day. Even if it's just a list of things that they did, or people that they saw, or what was a highlight of their day, what was something that they didn't enjoy about their day. This looking at their personality and just seeing, okay, what do they actually enjoy? Because that's what they'll continue doing.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. Keeping a daily journal is great. A little, like you said, a little recap of what happened, short essays or paragraphs. So give them, if they're talking about something, okay, so you really like this. Can you write one paragraph about, how you did this, the process, the steps, what you did yesterday, what you're going to do in the future. So again, you're practicing tenses and you're practicing grammatical skills that they're actually going to need for IELTS. So this is another really good way to help them. There's lots of online communities. So, some of you said you use some online platforms. There's things there where they can write things and get feedback. And again, before the class, after the class, if they want to send you little snippets of things to check, fantastic. It's a great way to make sure that they're on track and they're learning and they're writing every day as well. Again, accuracy and clarity is really important, because some students like to go overboard and try to impress you by writing way too much. They lose the clarity, they lose the accuracy. So keep it really concise, and make sure they proofread it as well, because I can't tell you the amount of times students said, oh, I've finished, I've done it, I did it in 30 minutes, I read it, and I say, is there any errors? They say, no, and then we pick out a lot of errors. This can really be the difference between a band 6 or band 7. So just really, really encourage them to proofread and check and work through questions with them, and point out things and ask them. Don't say, this is an error. Might be like, there's something I noticed in this first sentence. Can you see it? It might be something to do with your punctuation. Oh, does this need a comma? Oh, okay, where does the comma go? So little things like that to help as well. And this is also really good for critical thinking, because a lot of IELTS questions are, what's your opinion? To what extent do you agree from this perspective? Some people say this, other people say this. So they're going to have to think on their feet quite quickly and come up with a response. So again, if they're writing regularly about lots of topics, then this should be a little bit easier. And also they'll be able to do it quickly, because they'll have, that muscle memory, they'll have that habit of writing. So the more you write, the more you want to write, hopefully, and the more you write, the easier it is to write. That is the goal for that. Now, another really valuable skill that's going to help students a lot for IELTS, but also in their general English, is paraphrasing. Claudia, why is paraphrasing so important for students?
Yeah, so I mean, in IELTS, of course, the word paraphrasing is in the band descriptors. So
It
they
is.
are assessed based on based on how well they paraphrase.
Yes.
They would have to paraphrase the question as well as their own words. So paraphrasing is everything in IELTS. And then, of course, in general English as well, how many times do you want to repeat the same word, or you know, how can you express the same idea in different ways, basically?
Yeah.
So for IELTS, it's everything. And for general English, it's also useful because you don't want to go around in circles just using the same vocabulary all the time.
Yeah. Good, bad, like it, don't like it. Students
Yeah.
tend to stick to that. We want to get them away from those kinds of structures and get them to really build a wide range, because a wide range is a band 7. A limited range is a band 5. So we really want to get them beyond the limited to a wide range, in speaking and in writing as well. So the first step obviously is to use synonyms. So if there's certain keywords, key verbs, key things that they keep repeating, give them different options and say to them, okay, I'd like you to use a synonym now every time you say good, great, awesome, amazing, fantastic. Okay. You could start off like that by giving them different options so they can choose from words and then try to use them flexibly. That's also part of the band descriptors as well. The second step, changing positive to negative. So, you know, you might be asked, do you like this? And you say, well, actually, I don't like this. However, okay, or 80% of people do this. Well, 20% of people don't do this. So again, you can focus on the negative instead of the positive. That's fine, especially in speaking as well. Also in writing, you might want to show contrast. Task 1 does show you to compare sometimes to contrast, and also to talk about similarities and differences. So again, if you can paraphrase instead of just repeating, that is going to get you higher up in the band descriptors as well. Another one, which is tricky, but you can definitely work on, is from changing active to passive or passive to active, vice versa. So, you know, an example might be something like, you know, I enjoy doing this, maybe students enjoy doing this, so you can change it. Or, you know, the students were reading books, the books were being read by the students. So again, you can use it, say it in a different way, say it in a different form, just so you're not repeating yourselves over and over again. Use different word forms. So instead of a noun, use a verb or an adjective or an adverb. So, you know, run, running, running quickly, running the fastest. So again, we can just start building and expanding instead of just keeping it simple. Again, superlatives, imperatives, all these different word forms we can use, and changing the order of information. This might seem a bit counterproductive, but in writing, sometimes we might want to put our, you know, against argument first. We might want to put our for argument first. We might want to do it in a slightly different way. So if it says some people say this, other people say this, what do you think? You might say, well, let me start with what other people say. Okay, so you can change the order of the information or move around ideas as well. Maybe the question is, what do you enjoy doing in your free time on the weekends? So the response might be, on the weekends, if I have some free time, okay, we'll switch it around. It's perfectly fine. It's paraphrasing, it's original. We're not just parroting the questions back with that. Any other tips for paraphrasing, Claudia? These are the 5 main ones.
Yeah, I would say just get them to practice each method.
Yes, yes.
They don't have to use all methods during the test, but just get them to practice, give them practical exercises. And this is, once they get into it, once they start to do it, it becomes really easy, almost like second nature, the more that they do it.
And the goal is in the IELTS test, then they will do the same as well. So that is the goal. That is the goal for sure. Okay, one more is immersion. This one is tricky, and this one might not be as simple to do, but we can talk about immersion. So we've talked about like English language movies and TV shows, of course, and that's important, but maybe focus on certain things. So instead of saying, hey, watch the TV show Friends, you'll learn lots of English. You might. Focus on this episode. I'm going to give you a clip from this episode, and there's an expression here that Joey uses. He says, how you doing? What does that mean? How are you? Okay. But listen to the intonation, the stress, the way that he says it. Is he asking a question or is he making a statement? So again, you can use this as a really useful way to help immerse them. And I found I've given these clips or these little snippets to students, and then they're like, oh, I watched the whole season, or I keep watching, I can't stop. So it's a really nice lead in, and they find, oh, I'm learning things and it's entertaining at the same time. Oh my God, I hear this one a lot. I hear students say, oh my God. And then I say to them, well, this might not always be a good thing to say. It might actually, offend some people. So where does that come from? Use it as a learning opportunity as well, and try to give them alternatives or different ways to say things, because students love to pick things up and blurt them out without knowing what they mean or where they come from. So again, this is a really easy way you can help immerse them and give them lots of exposure to the right kinds of English. English music and podcasts. A lot of students learn music, so they say, I really love this singer, but I can't really understand the lyrics. Let's look at the lyrics. Let's break them down. Let's go through what they mean. I was using Adele because a student I have loves Adele, but her English is not that strong. So that's words like heartbreak, regret. What do those words mean? Oh, okay, heartbreak, to be heartbroken. So if I ask them about a time they were sad in IELTS, they can say, well, it was really heartbreaking for me. I was really regretful. I really regretted that time. Okay, so we can apply it to IELTS. And then again, comprehension improves. They get used to rhythm, intonation, stress, which they can hopefully replicate in their responses. I asked some students to listen to a podcast like The Daily, for current events. They find it really boring. They're like, this is kind of boring. I don't really know. But they can tell me, ask, okay, what were the main stories that were covered? Okay, and what did they talk about? And what's happening? So I can ask them those W questions: who, what, when, where, why. Fantastic. I get asked a question in IELTS. I don't know much about it. Well, I can describe who, when, where, what, why, how. I can describe those things. So I have 6 things to say, or 5 things I can say about every topic by doing this practice. Again, reading books helps them with different writing styles and structures. So I have a student who's reading To Kill a Mockingbird. Again, it's way above their level. I do not know why they got given that book to read by their school, but they did. They learned words like prejudice. Wow, that's a really strong word. So I don't like something. I really hate this thing. Okay, I'm prejudiced towards this thing. Wow. Okay, we're going really, really, really deep. Integrity. What does integrity mean? So we look at some synonyms for this. What does it mean to show integrity, to have integrity? Okay, we can talk about other related things like trust or honor or, being reliable. So we have all these different connections as well. And then reading news online as well. It helps them, to learn about scientific things, cultural things, environmental things, which come up a lot in IELTS. So by giving them these things, don't just say, hey, watch this, read this. Literally go with them and hold their hand and say, we're going to watch this together, or let's watch the first minute. Let's read the first paragraph and you're going to finish it. You're putting it in front of them. So there's no barrier. There's no real excuse for them not to be immersed. And generally, they will have a habit. And once they do something consistently, this is part of their habit all the time. So these are really good ways to help immerse them. Claudia, how else would you immerse your students in English as much as you can?
Yeah, so I mean, all these tips are great, of course. But I wanted to add earlier, we should also learn different forms of a word, because I've noticed that some of my students will use the wrong word form, like the noun instead of, the verb or whatever. So just making sure that they know the opposites meaning of the word, they know some words with a similar meaning, the synonyms, and that they know different word forms of that same meaning. I think that's really important. And then I really like what you said about sometimes picking up a line, but it's actually really offensive, or it may not be appropriate for an IELTS exam, or maybe it's slang and it's used in a way that isn't actually grammatically correct. I mean, should we be using that in IELTS? So, just paying attention, even when you're doing a general English lesson, they come to you with a whole bunch of slang. Okay, that's great. That is everyday English. However, I wouldn't say this to the examiner, because the whole meaning of the word has changed. So it could be
Yes.
misinterpreted or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And this is a good opportunity to get them out of bad habits or things they might have memorized before. For example, can you describe your hometown? Well, according to me, my hometown is,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. And so I don't know. So please tell me. So again, can be really frustrating at the outset. But again, we do a little bit of relearning as well. So resources for you. Again, I'll provide this for you in the recording so you can come back and check any of these. I do ask some students to use Duolingo if they can, because it really helps them with the building blocks of grammar. And it's just really helpful for building up their vocabulary quickly. So this is a popular tool that they use. I've used it for other languages as well. I do ask them to just do the free one and just spend 5-10 minutes a day on Duolingo just to help them build up. It's not really great in isolation, but as part of a diet of English, it can be quite useful. BBC Learning English, I love this resource because it has so many different videos, articles, quizzes. English Central as well is great as well. Quizlet is good for gamification. So if you have younger students or those with a slightly lower attention span, Quizlet's good as well. We've mentioned Cambridge English Online before. Free resources, free practice tests, free interactive tests. They also have level tests for grammar, which you can give students. For General English, you can also go on the IELTS section and get practice IELTS tests for free as well. English page has grammar and vocabulary. So if you're having students finding difficulties with articles, tenses, prepositions, those kinds of issues, then you can use this. Memorize is great for spaced repetition. So it helps them build vocabulary and they keep going back to the same words. They become less and less frequent. So they build up that repetition for vocabulary and grammar. Ingvid can be good for instructional videos. They're on YouTube. They have lots of grammar videos, vocabulary, pronunciation. I've used some of their stuff for writing as well. It's really useful. Fluent U is great for context and immersion, real world videos. So it really puts them in that situation, in that context, so they can pick up the right phrases. And then English Central has a lot of video-based courses as well and feedback. So I will copy this for you and I'll drop it in the chat if you need it. And then also this will be in the recording too. Okay, so I know we spoke a lot. I'm sure you have lots and lots of questions. So I'm just going to drop this in the chat and we'll hand it over to you if you have any questions. We'll be happy to answer them for you. And if not, that's absolutely fine as well. Let me just drop this in. So if you look in the chat now, you should see the ETS, which has the equivalencies for TOEFL, sorry, for TOEFL, yeah, and for IELTS. So you'll see the bands between them. And then also I've dropped in this all these resources that you can use to help students with their general English as well.